صنعاء ومسقط عماني ويا دمشق بلاد الشام.
They came here to attack Arabs.
You're watching Jewish Israelis, some armed with baseball bats, headed in the direction of a mosque.
Local Jews marked Arab houses in a red spray, so the ones who come from outside will recognize our houses and attack us. ISIS did it, and the Nazis did it. And now they are doing it for us.
This is the city of Lid, or Lod, as it's been known since Israeli forces took control of it in 1948.
هذه النكبة ما إلهاش مثيل طلعونا برا.
It's one of just a handful of binational cities where Palestinians and Jewish Israelis live together. Residents here told us that right-wing Jewish settlers are moving into Arab-majority neighborhoods in a deliberate effort to dilute the population.
We want the Palestinians to say, this is our land, this is our country, this is our city.
In the aftermath of a violent crackdown, new levels of mistrust and generational trauma are haunting its victims. We're in Lid to find out how Palestinians are challenging Israel's de facto policy of divide and rule while demanding freedom from systemic oppression.
The minute that set everything and the police lost it is when an Arab boy climbed that electric pole over there and he moved the Israel flag and he put instead a Palestinian flag.
For activist Ghassan Munayir, massive protests this spring signaled a kind of reawakening for the descendants of Palestinians who resisted efforts to violently force them out in 1948.
Inside Israel, we are Palestinians too. They tried all their best to tear us from our people and our nationality and our identity. They failed.
What happened next was several days of violence. 2 men were killed. One was Jewish and the other Palestinian.
يا الله ما اقدرش امرق من عنده هذا الكيكار ما اقدرش كل ما امرق من جنبه وشي بكتم على نفسي والله العظيم احساس مخيف.
Marwa Hassune's husband Musa was just a few minutes from home when he got caught up in protests that turned deadly.
هون قتلوه هون وين ما انا واقفه بالضبط.
The father of 3 children was shot dead after a settler fired his gun at protesters.
المستوطنين شايف هدول البنايات اللي غاد هدول بنوهم للمستوطنين عملوا لهم حاره لإلهم خصوصي إلهم.
Religious settlers have been moving into Lid from the occupied West Bank for over a decade with resources and support from the state. Their group is called the Gerin Torani, or Torah Seeds in English. They're expanding their community into Arab neighborhoods with the express goal of establishing a Jewish majority. Marwa visits her husband's grave daily with her family.
أحلى أيام حياتي شفتها معه أحلى أيام حياتي كل يوم أحلى من اللي قبله.
Suspects were detained in Musa's killing but released shortly after. Marwa says it's a testament to the ways Palestinians are treated differently by the justice system.
أكيد روحته على الدار لأنه هو يهودي واللي مات عربي فلو كان العكس القاتل هو عربي واللي انقتل يهودي فأكيد ما كانوش رح يروحوه.
Palestinians with Israeli citizenship face dozens of discriminatory laws that limit economic opportunity, restrict their movements, and deny them access to their land. And they live in a climate of pervasive fear and punishment. But Marwa and her family are determined to fight back.
ولو صار في أنا العكس كان موسى أكيد بسكتش عشاني وأنا مش رح أسكت عشانه. أنا بوعده أكيد أنا مش رح أسكت عشانه لموسى. والقتل رح ينحكم.
For Marwa's 6-year-old daughter Mila, what's left is hopelessness and confusion.
حابة إني أعيش معاه بس هذا أبرة. هو كان زلمة طيب كان يهتم فينا كلنا مش بس فيه كان هو يحبنا وأنا كتير هلأ مشتاقة له بعرفش شو أسوي هلأ بس مرة شفناه لما كان لابس أبيض
لما ودعنا
بعدين بابا راح ما قدرتش أفهم يعني إيش عم بيقولوا وأنا بعدين ما قدرتش
اشتقتي له حبيبتي ما تفهمش اشتقتي له
أنا كنت سنة لبابا
حبيبتي الغالية تحبي ماما أنت صح؟
The Hassouneh family is one of the oldest indigenous Palestinian families in Lid, who, like so many others, were forcibly expelled during the 1948 creation of Israel.
هذه النكبة ما إلهاش مثيل طلعونا برا هيك.
Musa's great-uncle, Ramadan, survived the Nakba, or catastrophe. That's when over 750,000 Palestinians were violently forced out of their homes.
New Jewish state is born in the tense atmosphere of civil war.
أنا لما قامت الدولة سنة 48 ب 11/7 بقى عمري 16 سنة ونص.
In Lid, more than 200 men, women, and children were murdered as they sought refuge in the Dahmash mosque. Ramadan recounts what happened afterward.
الساعة 3 آخر النهار سقطت البلد بيد القوات الإسرائيلية. بقت الحكومة الإسرائيلية ما تسمحش لحد يرجع.
Some 50,000 people in the city became refugees overnight. Historical accounts called it a death march.
طلعنا ماشي من هين لنعليل والطريق ما بقتش يعني مش طريق. بقى شهر رمضان أنا أفطرت ما قدرت أسوق.
After a few years, Ramadan's family found a way back to Lid. The city's name was changed to Lod, and their farming community was now jobless and completely dependent on the Jewish state that had taken their land.
فكنا قاعدين ببيت مش إلنا. الشغل كان صعب. فيش شغل. يعني تجيب معك مصاري ليرة زي شيء كبير.
And until 1966, they continued to live under military rule in virtual ghettos, surrounded by barbed wire because they were considered a threat. By the time they were granted Israeli citizenship, the state had taken away pretty much everything they had. Jewish Israeli resident Yigal Yehoshua was the other victim of deadly demonstrations in Lid. Yigal's brother Efi showed up at the Hassouneh family home to offer his sympathy.
כואב הלב, באמת כואב הלב. עזבי, אנחנו בני אדם. ועל כל בן אדם שנרצח, בכלל בעולם או בארץ הזו, כואב לי. איך לאנשים אין רחמנות? לא ליהודים, לא לערבים, לא לנוצרים, לא משנה מאיזה ארץ. לאנשים אין לב.
For Palestinians, it's not a question of just getting along or achieving coexistence. It's about living alongside Jewish Israelis who refuse to recognize the brutality of their past and current experiences.
אתה רואה בכביש אנשים עצבניים, אחד נכנס בשני, אחד חותך בשני.
אבל אף פעם לא הגענו למצב הזה.
אני אומר, למה?
כמה זמן אתה נמצא בזה?
אני
כמה שנים?
יותר ממך.
יפה מאוד.
אני כמעט 60 שנה ואני חייתי בעיר הזו,
אז אתה יודע טוב מאוד מי תושבי לוד ואיך אנחנו חיים ביחד שנים. למה זה קרה בתקופה האחרונה?
הכל טוב, אבל צריך לא להתסיס את העניינים.
During filming, thousands of right-wing extremists marched through East Jerusalem, waving flags and celebrating the day in 1967 when Israel occupied the city. The crowd cheered as one Palestinian counter-protester was pulled away by his neck. As police dragged away a Palestinian woman, a group of youth shouted.
We want the Palestinians that said, this is our land, this is our country, this is our city. And then if they want to live here, they can to live in peace and don't have problems for nothing.
As new housing projects for hardline Jewish settlers persist, Lid's mayor has been accused of emboldening their growth with discriminatory policies and anti-Arab rhetoric. A few years ago, he barged into the Dahmash mosque, the same site where Palestinians were massacred during the Nakba, and demanded they lower the volume. At an Arab primary school, parents say armed members of the Gerin Torani stormed the property and demanded the school turn over its playground to the city so it could be used as a tourist walkway.
الصبح قلت لها بدك تروحي المدرسة مدرستنا والأرض أرضنا.
Incidents like this have signaled a new level of aggression that Palestinians in the city haven't seen before. Armed extremist Jewish Israelis trying to enforce their own rule and order.
بدهم كل شيء لهم. بدهم كل شيء لهم. إحنا ما بنصير.
AJ Plus requested an interview with the Gerin Torani. They didn't reply to our request.
Democracy without equality doesn't exist. What we see here is apartheid.
Ghassan showed us a 10-foot wall on the north side of the city that separates a wealthy, thriving Jewish neighborhood from a poor, struggling Arab one.
The building of this wall reflects how the Jewish majority looks at us. They don't want to see us. So we build walls in order not to see you and not to see your miserable life and your misery. Most of the Arabs in Lod are second and third generation of 1948 refugees. We will not leave this place. We will not leave this place. This is our homeland. This is my city.
As Marwa and her family are left to confront new layers of trauma, she responds to Yigal's brother Effie in fluent Hebrew.
אנחנו צריכים להרגיע את שני הצדדים, שאם אתם רוצים לחיות ביחד, צריכים להרגיע. לא לחפש טריגר, סיבה, לריב. אני לא אחפש איתו סיבה לריב. כי שנייה אחת, גפרור אחד, אני מדליק אותו. הוא יירגע. הוא יירגע אם אנחנו נדבר בהיגיון, בנועם, בנחת, אני והוא, נכון. זה ככה יהיה. אם לא, אנחנו נלך לקיצוני ימני או קיצוני שמאלי או קיצוני...
אבל זה כבר מאוחר מה שאנחנו. יירגע אחרי מה? אחרי שבית שלם נהרס, אחרי שיש לו 3 יתומים שבלי אבא.
יפה.
א' כל...
מסכים איתך.
הרוצח יקבל את העונש שלו, ואז נדבר על מה שאתה אומר.
אני לא מחכה לרוצח.
מה שאתה אומר, אתה אומר 100%.
זה רק יסגור לי מעגל אם ימצאו.